The most underrated thing about Alex Eala's run in Berlin right now is not that she beat 2 top 10 players in 2 nights, it's that she beat 2 completely different kinds of top 10 players, using the exact same mechanism. That should worry exactly 1 player left in this draw. Now, before you assume this is just another plucky underdog narrative, it isn't. This is built off the actual shot-by-shot data from both matches. Not vibes, not a feel-good story arc, not a wildcard fairy tale dressed up as analysis. Here's the system Eala is running, and it's not complicated to describe, it's just rare to execute. She does not try to out-hit bigger ball strikers. That's the trap most undersized players fall into against power players, and it's a losing strategy almost every time. Instead, she shortens the point before the bigger hitter gets to use their weapon. That means attacking second serves earlier in the swing, taking the ball on the rise from inside the baseline, and refusing to retreat into a defensive crouch even against real pace. The one condition that has to be true for this to work, her return contact point has to stay on or inside the baseline. The moment she's pushed a step behind it, even half a step, the system collapses into a track meet she cannot win, because now she's reacting to pace instead of redirecting it. Not hypothetically, not in a lesser event. At the 2026 Berlin Open, back-to-back nights, against Rybakina, the world No. 2, and one of the heaviest servers on tour, she won 7-5, 6-4. Against Svitolina, the world No. 8, and a far more varied, experienced ball striker, she won 6-3, 6-4. And in that Svitolina match specifically, the ace count favored Svitolina 4-1, and Eala still won more points in the first set, 15-11. That's not survival. That's a designed outcome against a player with 20 career titles and far more weapons in the arsenal. So where does this break? It breaks against a player who doesn't rely on raw pace to hurt you, who instead changes direction mid-rally off a flat, low-bouncing ball that arrives early, taking time away before Eala can load her return weight forward. Not a big first serve, not a heavy topspin forehand she can time on the rise, a flat, low strike that gets to her before her usual rhythm kicks in. That's not a hypothetical opponent built for the sake of this video. That's Linda Noskova's exact blueprint, and it's the same blueprint that just dismantled Paula Badosa in straight sets to reach this same semifinal 8 aces. 24 winners to just 11 unforced errors, a serving and ball striking clinic that gave Badosa no rhythm to work with at all. This mirrors what happened when a young Caroline Garcia first started consistently troubling bigger servers in the mid-2010s. Her game ran on similar logic: compact strokes, early contact, taking time away rather than generating it herself. For a stretch, almost nobody had an answer. Then players who could redirect pace before the bounce settled rather than after started solving her timing piece by piece. Within a season, the tour had adjusted around her. The lesson held across eras: a return system built on early contact is lethal until someone takes the ball even earlier than you do. And here's what nobody is connecting yet. Eala's improvement this season isn't really about power, and it's not about a single signature shot either. It's about second serve return aggression, specifically the willingness to attack the weaker delivery early and often, rather than playing it safe and resetting the point. That's the one return metric that tends to predict sustained results against players ranked above you. Not just a single good week against a player having an off night. Power players can survive one bad serving day. They struggle to survive an opponent who treats every second serve as an invitation. There's a psychological tell here too, and it's easy to miss if you're only watching the scoreline. After closing out Svitolina, Eala didn't talk about the match itself. She talked about admiring Svitolina's composure as a mother on tour, about watching her since childhood. That's not just a nice quote for the highlight reel. Players who can complement an opponent's calm immediately after taking them apart are usually the ones who weren't rattled during the match. Composure recognizes composure. Contrast that with how she described the closing stretch of the second set, calling it the hardest part of the match, and admitting she had to conjure everything she had left mentally. That's a player who knows exactly where the pressure points were, which means she was tracking the match tactically the entire time, not just surviving it emotionally. Now, here's the honest case against this thesis, and I want to give it real weight rather than rushing past it. Eala has lost to Noskova before 6-2, 6-0 just 3 months ago at Indian Wells, and lost badly, with almost no answer for Noskova's flat early timing ball on a hard court. That match is real. It happened. It wasn't close. And it's the single biggest data point standing against everything I just argued. If you wanted to make the case that this matchup simply doesn't favor Eala regardless of form, that scoreline is your entire argument, and it's not a weak one. But here's why I still hold the position. That match was on hard court, where Noskova's flat strikes carry through the contact zone with very little resistance. Eala's return numbers on grass this season tell a different story entirely. She's gone 9-1 on the surface, and grass compresses the margin for error on those same flat, low strikes, because the bounce is lower and less predictable than on hard courts. The exact shot that dominated her in March behaves differently on this surface. It's not a guarantee. It's a meaningfully different fight than the one she lost in the desert. Now let's zoom out, because this isn't just a two-match story. This is part of a larger shift happening in the WTA right now, a wave of players ranked outside the top 30 who are beating elite ball strikers not through bigger weapons of their own, but through better return timing and shorter points. Mira Andreeva's recent French Open run lives in this same category, built on similar return discipline rather than overwhelming power. The tour's competitive hierarchy is starting to separate from the rankings sheet in ways that traditional power ranking logic doesn't fully capture yet. Now imagine this scenario. Wimbledon, second week. Eala, the wildcard, who just beat two top 10 players in Berlin on consecutive nights, drawn against a flat, early timing ball striker on the one surface where her return window is widest and the margin for error on flat strikes shrinks. Same mechanism that's carried her through Berlin. Higher stakes, bigger stage, no home cushion. The label writes itself before a ball is even struck. The return artist versus the redirect specialist. Round 2, with a Grand Slam quarterfinal on the line instead of a 500-level semifinal. Let's put real numbers on this, because trajectory claims mean nothing without them. Eala has now beaten 6 top 10 opponents across her WTA career, a list that started with Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek during her breakthrough at the Miami Open. She's 9-1 on grass this season after winning the Birmingham title outright as preparation for exactly this stretch of the calendar. And in this specific tournament, her return points won rate has outpaced a 4-1 ace deficit in a set she still won outright. Compare that trajectory to where Garcia stood at the same developmental stage, a player whose results were starting to outrun her ranking for the same structural reason. These are not random improvements scattered across a hot week. These are the fingerprints of a player entering her first real push toward the top 20, not just a player having a nice tournament. So here's my prediction, and I'm being specific, because vague predictions don't hold anyone accountable. Alex Eala reaches at least the quarterfinals at Wimbledon 2026. Not a feeling, not a hedge dressed up as a forecast. A documented call, dateable against a tournament that starts in a matter of weeks, win or lose, from here in Berlin. So, back to where we started. The most underrated thing about this Berlin run was never the two upsets themselves. Upsets happen on tour every week, and most of them mean very little 6 months later. What matters is that one repeatable return mechanism just beat two structurally different kinds of power on 2 different nights against 2 players with a combined 8 major semi-final appearances between them. If Noskova solves that mechanism the way she did in March, this whole thesis gets a real, immediate test on Saturday on a surface that wasn't part of the original equation. And if that happens, I'll say so plainly, on camera, in the very next video. Because we don't chase narratives here, we build them from the ground up.